Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. My name is Lindsay Goff. I am the Digital Marketing Manager at People for Bikes, and we're very excited to talk to you about electric bicycle purchase incentives. Thank you for your patience as we had to reschedule this. We really appreciate it. To get us started, if you want to drop into the chat your favorite place to ride an e-bike, that's how we're going to kick it off. Before we keep going, I would like to give a huge, sincere thank you to our members. You are really what makes our work possible. It was really inspiring to see all of your engagement and collaboration at the Bicycle Leadership Conference, so we really appreciate you. Again, into the chat, we're dropping our favorite place to ride an e-bike. And with that, I'm really excited to introduce our speakers to you. Ashley, our Regulatory and Policy Analyst, as well as Noah, our Federal Affairs Manager. So let's jump right in.
Thanks, Lindsay. We have an exciting agenda today. I'm really excited to talk with you all, along with my colleague Noah, about e-bike purchase incentive programs that are in the US. So today we'll be talking about e-bike market demand and demographics, how electric bicycle purchase incentive programs can benefit your business and your community, what People for Bikes is doing at the federal level to support purchase incentive programs. And then towards the end of the meeting, we'll be talking about certain programs within California, Colorado, and Vermont that are leading players in purchase incentive programs that are US-based. And then finally, to end our meeting today, we'll be talking about how you can support the EBike Act and purchase incentive programs today. So moving on to our first item, I'd like to talk about the market demand and demographics for electric bicycles. I think we all know that e-bikes are very popular, and they have been for a while now, but just to get a sense of everything, People for Bikes data has shown so far that 10% of American adults report having ridden an e-bike for the first time, ridden a bicycle for the first time in a year or more since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is no different for e-bikes. Again, e-bikes have experienced quite the demand and quite the increase recently. E-bike sales in the US grew 145% from 2019 to 2020. And they are the fastest growing category of bicycle sales in the US. And lastly here, many individuals are looking to electric bicycles as a second car replacement or a way to leave their home and not use the car for short-term trips. And so this is also an encouraging insight to see that many US individuals are seeing e-bikes as something that is convenient and an alternative mode of transportation than using a car for everyday trips. So moving on to our next slide here, I'd like to touch on a couple pieces as to why electric bicycle purchase incentive programs can benefit your business and your community. People for Bikes has done a number of webinars on the benefits of e-bikes and how they can benefit your health, the environment, and the local economy. But specifically through the lens of a purchase incentive program, there are a number of benefits to note. So the first benefit here is that electric bicycle purchase incentive programs, they may lead to a new and returning customer base if you're a retail shop specifically. So just as the name implies, an incentive program is incentivizing the use of electric bicycles. So having an incentive program in place may get more people to visit your shop than they otherwise would have, and because they're interested and they want to learn more. The second piece here is that participation can demonstrate a business's commitment to fostering sustainable transportation solutions. So whether you're a retail shop or a larger bicycle company, your support of a purchase incentive program can demonstrate that you're wanting to help create this vision, this future for e-bike bicycle adoption and the benefits it can have for a local transportation system and the environment. The last piece here is that e-bike purchase incentive programs can help bridge the gap for communities who are traditionally excluded from the early adoption of new technologies. So there aren't that many in the US that programs that specifically look to support low-income and essential workers and disadvantaged communities, but there are a handful. But programs that do have this extra layer to support community members who are not traditionally early adopters of a new technology can really help build equity within a community and make sure all community members are feeling welcomed and able to get the benefits of this new technology. So now that we've talked about this, I'm going to pass it over to Noah to talk about the EBike Act and what we're doing at the federal level.
Thanks, Ashley. Hi, everyone. Many of you who joined us at the Bicycle Leadership Conference or have been following our work, I'm sure have heard of the EBike Act. And so we're just going to break it down a little bit today, and we'll be able to answer any questions at the end of the presentation about it. But if this is totally new to you and you don't know what I'm talking about, let's go back to square one. The EBike Act, which is of course an acronym, it stands for the Electric Bicycle Incentive Kickstart for the Environment Act, is a bill that was introduced in the US House of Representatives, so in Congress, federal legislation, to offer the first of its kind purchase incentive or a tax credit for electric bicycles. This would be, as written in the bill, refundable. So that means that even if you don't have income to report on your taxes, you are eligible to receive the credit. 30% of the purchase of the cost of the electric bicycle, up to $1,500. And this is for qualifying new electric bicycles. Qualifying meaning it falls within the 3-class system, and if the final bill that passes does include some type of cap, that would be within the considerations of what's eligible. This is introduced by Congressman Jimmy Panetta from California, the Santa Cruz area, Earl Blumenauer from Portland, Oregon, and Mike Thompson from the Napa area in California. They're all great champs for biking in the House and in the Congressional Bike Caucus, so it only made sense that they led the introduction of this really important bill. Like I said, this is the first of its kind when it comes to just straight up purchase incentives, a tax credit for electric bicycles. A lot of the inspiration for this bill and our collaboration with those offices was inspired by the fact that you can get a tax credit for the purchase of an electric vehicle. And we know that, like Ashley said, electric bicycles are in many ways replacing car trips or replacing that second family car, making it easier to do what you need to do. Go pick up the kids, go to the grocery store, run your errands, whatever it is, without a car. And because there are no emissions involved in the process of riding an electric bicycle, it only makes sense to elevate them, prioritize them, and incentivize them meaningfully for Americans looking to reduce their carbon footprint. So on the whole, this is going to be aimed at increasing electric bicycle adoption. So for retailers and direct-to-consumer brands that sell e-bikes, which I think are most of you now, this is going to be a huge opportunity for your customer base to take advantage of. Granted, this bill has only been introduced. It is building support, and co-sponsors are being added every day, which is fantastic, and many thanks to the support of the bike industry members and our grassroots members reaching out to their members of Congress and saying, you should really co-sponsor this bill. But it does still need to get, included in a larger moving legislative package and signed into law. If you're asking for the political outlook, which is usually, question number 2, I feel optimistic that this is something that will be included in a larger moving package, whether that's infrastructure or climate policy or green taxes. But the timing of an overall package like that is a whole other ballgame. Know that People for Bikes and our network and our coalition of supporters of the EBike Act are working every day in Washington, D.C. to build support and to get this included as the conversation and the debate over an infrastructure package sort of heatens up. So the timing is still a big question mark, but we certainly feel optimistic for its potential to be passed within the next couple of years. But again, when we talk legislation at the federal level, we are talking years. So this is a long haul, and we need the bike industry support behind it to ensure that it's this is seen as a must include addition to any larger package in Washington, D.C. And that's the EBike Act. We'll move it on now. Thank you.
Thanks, Noah. So the next couple of slides here, next handful of slides, I'd like to highlight a number of different programs that we're seeing at the state and local level that are sources of inspiration and just different structures that exist for e-bike purchase incentive programs. The first that I like to highlight here is the Clean Cars for All program in California. This program is designed to support low-income and disadvantaged communities in the equitable adoption of electric bicycles. And the way in which it's structured is that participants who qualify in the program, and again, qualifying means that they have to reach the low-income and disadvantaged requirements, they can get up to a $7,500 voucher towards the purchase of an electric bicycle or the use of a bike share program in exchange for an old gas-powered vehicle. And the reason why we're highlighting this program today is because it is the most progressive e-bike purchase incentive program in the country. And it does so specifically through looking to support low-income and disadvantaged communities. And lastly, I'd like to note that that $7,500, it can go towards the purchase of an electric bicycle, but also accessories. So it's quite a cool program. And although, this can't be replicated everywhere, it is a source of inspiration. Moving forward, the next slide, the Can Do Community Challenge in Colorado. So this program is newer, and it was built in part to support low-income and essential workers during the COVID-19 pandemic. And what's particularly interesting about this program is that they really learned by doing and building partnerships with their local community and organizations. So in fall of 2020, there was 13 low-income and essential workers in the Denver area that participated in this program. They were given free electric bicycles and accessories, and in exchange, they had to promise, or voluntarily promise, that they would ride their electric bicycles in replacement for car trips. And to track this, they were given a free app that was developed by NRELM that would track their trips, and then the app would then convert what those trips mean in terms of carbon replacement. So the state here was able to learn, one, how the electric bicycle incentive program in this manner would lay out in Colorado and how it could be successful, but two, how the program could help the state meet its greenhouse gas reduction goals. So again, this was done through the state. This was done through the Colorado Energy Office. It was in partnership with Bicycle Colorado, Slow High Bikes, a local bike shop, and then NREL. So a number of different players there that worked together to help make this program a success. So they had this pilot program, and it's been expanded to a state level pilot program here in 2021, but it demonstrated that e-bikes are safe, healthy, and a convenient way to make essential trips around town. Moving to the last example here, this is Green Mountain Power in Vermont. Green Mountain Power is a utility company in Vermont, and they offer a $200 rebate for electric bicycle rebate for their customers. So the way this works is, again, they had to get partnerships going with local bike shops who are willing to participate in the rebate program. But their customers can go to one of those participating retailers, purchase their e-bike, give the bike shop owner their Green Mountain Power account number, and that information gets transferred back to Green Mountain Power, and the rebate is shown on their statement, their next monthly bill. So this was a really interesting program. 600 customers benefited from it in 2020, and there was a number of different benefits. So Green Mountain Power saw an increase in energy usage due to these customers charging their electric bicycle, something that they didn't have before necessarily, and additional energy that they were using. And bicycle retailers got to connect with new customers who may have not been thinking about an e-bike before the rebate was shown to them. And so, yeah, that's just another source of inspiration, another interesting way in which a company worked with local retailers to get an e-bike purchase incentive program started. So the key takeaways here, I've mentioned this a number of times, but partnerships truly are key. There's a number of different ways an e-bike purchase incentive program can be structured, a number of different ways that people can go about doing it, but it really is helpful to have partnerships in play. Know who your local bike advocacy group is, know who in government is interested in helping with it, and getting organized and start planning. That's really the number one thing to do. Additionally here, additional education supports new riders. So with e-bike purchase incentive programs often does come new riders who may not understand an e-bike totally, or may see it as kind of an abstract, strange thing. So to get them to participate, especially those new folks who may be low income or disadvantaged and not traditional bicycle riders, it's important to have education available to help them visualize themselves using an e-bike and feel comfortable with them. Lastly, in addition to education, marketing is super important. So working with your partners to get the word out about these programs, making sure you're getting participants after all that work to get it established, and making sure it's successful is super important. And I will kick it over to Noah for ways to show your support for the EBike Act.
Thanks, Ashley. So hopefully you are all converted EBike Act supporters by now, if you weren't already. And in the same way that it takes some folks to maybe be converted to e-bikes, now we have to convert them to policy advocates too. So a couple really quick and easy ways to show your support for the EBike Act. And I believe these links will get dropped in the chat for your convenience. The first one is to send a letter to your member of Congress asking them to co-sponsor the bill. As co-sponsors increase, more names are added endorsing the bill, the better chances this has to be included in a larger package. And it shows leadership in Congress that their members are serious about this. So through that link, which will get dropped in the chat, you can really easily, quickly fill out your information, your zip code, and that'll send a letter directly to your member's office. The next way is with this one pager that we've developed and have been using in advocacy efforts. You can download that. It has all, the FAQs that we've been getting on the EBike Act, the basics of what it does, why e-bikes offer so much potential to reduce carbon emissions through increased mode share and trips. So that's a handy tool to have either for your customers or your website, your family and friends. If you have an uncle that's stubborn and needs convincing, send them one pager, see what happens. And that's just a great tool to have on hand, and it might answer some of your questions as well. And lastly, if you are on social media or on Twitter, please give our new policy channel a follow. That is at PFB Policy, because that's where we'll be sharing updates about the status of the EBike Act, new co-sponsors, as well as all of our other policy work in Washington, D.C., and sometimes at the state level too. So if you're online and you are not following us, please do, and engage with us, ask questions. We'll follow back, and it's a newly launched channel that's been pretty successful so far, and exciting to have an opportunity to share more of our work on the policy side. And if you're tweeting about the EBike Act, you should use the hashtag EBike Act so that we can find it. Wonderful. That's everything you can do to show your support right now. Building co-sponsorship and getting the word out is the #1 thing. And we so appreciate everyone's commitment and engagement on this bill and other programs related to e-bikes and getting more people on them.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley and Noah. Very informative, and I will be dropping those second 2 links in the chat in just a second here. Thank you everyone for participating. We did have some questions that came through ahead of time, so as we're getting into those, feel free to drop your other questions into the Q&A toolbar or the chat, and we will answer those. So the first question that came through ahead of time from David is, will the e-bike purchase incentives also include an allowance for helmets or other accessories?
So there's obviously every different program is structured in its own way, but we would certainly recommend, based off of what we have seen be successful, especially in European countries, is including funding for accessories for locks as well is really critical, and making sure that the e-bikes are used safely and can be stored safely. Ashley, is there anything to share about existing programs that offer an allowance for those in the US?
That offer an allowance for accessories? Yeah, so as I was saying earlier, the California Clean Cars for All program, the voucher that is available, the $7,500 voucher, it can be applied to accessories. And Noah and I have had many conversations about e-bike purchase incentive programs at all levels of government, but specifically when it's tied to low-income populations or disadvantaged communities, it's really important to have that accessory framework included. So if you're working with anybody or interested in learning more about purchase incentive programs, always advocating for the accessories is incredibly important for folks who are looking to have an e-bike as a car replacement, and then looking at cargo bikes or bikes that can handle those other accessories to use it as a car replacement. But California is the number one to look at.
Great, awesome. Another question from John that came through ahead of time. This is just kind of a general e-bike question. How do the subcategories work? Is it MTB, commuter? How does People for Bikes define the e-bike categories?
Noah?
Sure, yeah, I was having the unmute button. So that's a wonderful question. And so we always point to the 3-class definition for electric bicycles. Ashley and some of our colleagues have been doing really incredible work to get the 3-class definition, so class 1, class 2, and class 3, passed at state transportation codes. And I believe we're at 32 states now, so certainly far over a majority of states recognize the 3-class definition of electric bicycles. And that's also something we're working on at the federal level, and as new transportation bills or tax bills move, we are working on getting updated definitions for electric bicycles included. That's part of the EBike Act as well. What it makes an electric bicycle qualifying for the tax credit would be that it falls within a class 1, class 2, or class 3 system. So I don't think we need to get into what class 1s, 2s, and 3s are right now, but we can absolutely share some resources in the chat and links to what the model definition looks like. But I think when it comes to purchase incentive programs, I'll add quickly that it's generally, we've seen just electric bicycles that fall within the system of 3 classes are included. And I don't think there's been much said about whether it's an EMTB or it's a, electric cargo bicycle. And that's, there's a lot of reasons why, but also just because there's such a variety of product out there that sometimes it's not always clear what can be definitively an electric cargo bicycle or definitively an electric mountain bicycle if you're using your mountain bike for transportation too. That happens as well.
Great, thank you. Awesome, Noah. Another question that is similar, so feel free to volley this away if it's too close, but Wayne wanted to know, again, just for e-bikes, are the regulations different between a bicycle versus a tricycle, throttle versus pedal assist? How does that fit within the 3-class system?
I can start. So the 3-class system doesn't differentiate between different categories of electric bicycles, but it does differentiate between the throttle versus pedal assist. So many of you might know that, but if you don't, I just dropped in the chat, or Lindsay's going to share in the chat, our model 3-class system that has been adopted in over 30 states now across the US. But so class 1 is a pedal assist bicycle without a throttle that goes up to 20 miles per hour in assisted speed. Class 2 goes up to 20 miles per hour. And that has a throttle, and then class 3 does not have a throttle. So those are the 3 classes, but we do not differentiate based off of the category of bicycle.
Awesome, very informative. Thank you so much. Okay, another question from Matt. I'm really interested in this one. How can bike shops help reach out to these low-income residents that may be interested in riding e-bikes?
That's another great question. And Noah, feel free to chime in because we've had a number of conversations on this. But one way in particular, the the Can Do Colorado Community Challenge. That program in particular, it looked, again, like I said earlier, to have participants that are low-income and essential workers. And so that was one of the requirements of the program. And the ways in which the pilot program, now that it's expanded to the state level, it's asking folks across the state if they have any ideas of pilot programs and how to get in contact with these low-income and essential workers. And one program that was proposed that I spoke with, they were partnering with a local housing authority, a low-income housing authority, to get those contacts. And their idea was for a e-bike library in that community. So that's just one way to do it, and just partnering with different organizations and agencies that cater to and assist low-income populations is just one way to get those contacts and get those relationships. And there's several ways. I don't know if Noah, you have any other ideas, but that's one of the most interesting ways I've heard of.
Yeah, there's a lot that can be done, and we don't have a perfect answer because we're sort of in this experimental trial phase of purchase incentive programs in the U.S. So, but some things we would recommend is really looking at the structure of what you're proposing for the incentive. Is it a voucher where people don't have to pay up front, somewhat like a tax credit? That can really lower the financial barrier to entry for some communities. And I say that knowing full well that the EBike Act is a tax credit. That's really the opportunity we had at the federal level. But when you get to the state and local levels, I think there's a little bit more room for creativity and sort of figuring out the right funding streams that would make something like a voucher or a short-term rebate more accessible to low-income communities and individuals who may not be able to put the upfront cost of the bicycle out at once. One more thing I'll add, again, understanding that the EBike Act that we are so supportive of is a tax credit, is we're going to be looking to the bike industry to help us make sure that if and when it is passed and the credit becomes available, that it's successful. And when we say successful, we mean this credit's being taken advantage of across tax brackets and income levels and demographics in communities all across the country. And that might involve some type of financing structure. We've seen some really small scale community financing structures for e-bike purchases or e-bike lending libraries where the bike industry has supported financially those operations to give those individuals who might need a little bit more cash up front to get the bicycle. And so that's something that we're exploring. It's really early stages, but know that there's a lot of opportunity out there for the bike industry to show up for low-income communities as these new incentive programs are being rolled out and developed and sort of come up with for the first time, trialed.
Lovely. What a nice note to end on. I love that. Before we jump off, I do want to call out one more question from Gregory and just make sure that everyone saw his question. How can we speed up the legislative process? And Noah went ahead and answered, we wish we knew how to make Congress, get their tails working, but we don't. So right now, write in, call to your member of Congress and ask them to co-sponsor the EBike Act bill. And that is our presentation for today. So thank you so much, Noah and Ashley, for the informative content. And it was wonderful to see all of you here. So we will see you next time. Have a good day.